Lady Gaga stopped the show for this. The thunderous applause of 20,000 fans shook Madison Square Garden as Lady Gaga, adorned in a crystalline bodysuit that caught every beam of light, held the final note of Shallow. Sweat glistened on her forehead as she took a deep bow, the crowd erupting into a deafening roar. It was the third night of her comeback tour, and New York, her hometown, was giving her exactly the homecoming she had dreamed of. "Thank you, New York," she called out, her voice slightly hoarse from 2 hours of belting her heart out. "You guys are—" She stopped mid-sentence. Her eyes narrowed, focusing on something beyond the front row. The audience followed her gaze, confused by the sudden halt. "I'm sorry," Gaga said, raising a hand to shield her eyes from the stage lights. Did anyone else hear that? The crowd fell silent, bewildered. In the hush, a faint sound became audible. A distressed mewling coming from somewhere beneath the massive stage. Without hesitation, Gaga moved to the edge of the platform, crouching down in her 6-inch heels. The spotlight followed her, illuminating her furrowed brow as she peered into the darkness. "Can somebody get me a flashlight?" she called to her crew. Backstage, 23-year-old Elijah Martinez froze. As the newest stagehand on Gaga's tour, hired just 2 weeks ago, he should have been invisible, part of the machinery that kept the show running smoothly. But as other crew members scrambled to find a flashlight, Elijah felt his stomach drop. He knew exactly what that sound was. 3 hours earlier, while helping set up the hydraulic lifts, he'd spotted a small calico cat that had somehow wandered into the venue. He'd tried to catch it, but the frightened animal had darted beneath the stage infrastructure. With final sound checks beginning and thousands of fans already lining up outside, Elijah had made the fateful decision to deal with it after the show. Now, as Lady Gaga herself knelt at the edge of the stage, illuminated by 20,000 phone flashlights, Elijah's negligence was about to become the center of attention at one of the biggest concerts of the year. "I think there's an animal trapped under here," Gaga announced into her microphone, her voice echoing through the arena. The mewling grew louder, as if in response. A stagehand rushed forward with a powerful flashlight, which Gaga immediately aimed beneath the stage. Her expression shifted from concern to determination. "There's a cat down there," she announced, "and it looks terrified." Without another word, Lady Gaga did something no one expected. She handed her microphone to a backup dancer, kicked off her heels and lowered herself to sit at the edge of the stage. "We're taking a little intermission, New York," she called out, "because no show is worth ignoring someone in need, even if that someone has 4 paws." The crowd's reaction was mixed. Confusion, amusement, and concern rippled through the arena as Lady Gaga, still glittering under the lights, dangled her bare feet over the edge of the stage. Her dancers exchanged uncertain glances. This wasn't in the meticulously choreographed show they'd rehearsed for months. "Can someone cut the bass?" Gaga called to her sound engineers. "It's scaring the little one." As the low-frequency rumble that had been pulsing through the venue subsided, Elijah Martinez pushed his way forward through the backstage chaos. His supervisor, a veteran stage manager named Diana, grabbed his arm. "What do you know about this?" she hissed, her expression making it clear that the show's interruption was a catastrophic event. Elijah swallowed hard. I saw the cat earlier. I tried to catch it, but there wasn't time before." "You knew about this?" Diana's face flushed with anger. "Do you have any idea what's at stake here? We're live streaming to millions." Before Elijah could respond, Lady Gaga's voice cut through their exchange. "I need someone small who can help me," she called out. "Someone from the crew who knows the understage area." All eyes turned to Elijah. At 5'7" and slender, he was indeed the smallest member of the stage crew. Diana's glare softened slightly. "Well," she said, "this is your mess. Fix it." Heart pounding, Elijah stepped forward into the glow of the stage lights. 20,000 faces turned toward him, and he felt his legs go weak. He'd moved to New York 3 years ago with dreams of working in the music industry, but not like this. Not as the guy who ruined Lady Gaga's triumphant hometown concert. "What's your name?" Gaga asked, offering him her hand as he approached. "Elijah," he managed, his voice barely audible. "Elijah, I'm Stefani," she said, using her real name, "and we've got a cat to save." The audience cheered as Gaga pulled a small communication device from her ear and handed it to Elijah. "Tell me what you need." Under the scrutiny of thousands, Elijah explained how the complex hydraulic system beneath the stage created dozens of small compartments where the cat could be hiding. What he didn't say was that those same hydraulics were scheduled to activate for the next act. A spectacular rising platform that would elevate Gaga 20 feet into the air. "If we don't get the cat out in the next 15 minutes, he whispered so only she could hear, "it could be crushed when the next set sequence starts." Something flickered in Gaga's eyes. Not panic, but resolve. She turned to the audience. "New York," she announced. "I've done a lot of wild things on stage, but tonight we're going off script. There's a cat trapped under this stage, and we're going to save it. Together." The crowd roared its approval. But backstage, Diana was frantically conferring with producers and Gaga's management. The show was running on a tight schedule, with union regulations, broadcast times, and thousands of fans who had paid hundreds of dollars for tickets. What the audience didn't know, what only Gaga's inner circle was aware of, was that the singer had recently experienced a devastating personal loss. Her beloved French bulldog, Asia, had passed away just weeks before the tour began. The dog had been her constant companion through years of both triumph and struggle, a source of unconditional love when the pressures of fame became overwhelming. As Elijah led Lady Gaga toward the side stage access point, she grabbed his arm. "I'm not leaving that cat down there," she said, her voice low and intense. "No matter what anyone says. Understand?" Elijah nodded, suddenly understanding that this rescue was about more than just a stray cat. It was about something deeply personal to one of the world's biggest stars. "Then let's do this," he said, with newfound determination. The understage area was a labyrinth of cables, metal supports, and hydraulic equipment, all of which appeared massive and menacing in the beam of Elijah's flashlight. Lady Gaga followed close behind, having swapped her crystal bodysuit for a crew member's black t-shirt and pants. Despite the transformation, she still wore her elaborate stage makeup, creating a surreal image as she crawled through the narrow space. "Here, kitty," she called softly, the sweetness in her voice a stark contrast to the powerful vocals that had filled the arena minutes before. Above them, the crowd had turned the unexpected intermission into an impromptu party. Gaga's band had begun playing acoustic versions of her hits, and 20,000 voices sang along. The arena screens now displayed a live feed from a crew member's phone, following the rescue mission happening beneath their feet. "Over there," Elijah whispered, pointing toward a small shadow that darted between two hydraulic pistons. "That's where I saw it earlier." They crawled deeper into the mechanical underworld, the space growing tighter. The cat's cries grew louder, more desperate. "The poor thing must be terrified," Gaga said, her voice thick with emotion. "All these people, the noise." "We're running out of time," Elijah warned, checking his watch. 10 minutes before the system reactivates." Gaga nodded, then called out again to the frightened animal. This time, something in her voice, a genuine tenderness that couldn't be faked, seemed to reach the cat. A small calico face peered out from behind a bundle of cables. "There you are," Gaga breathed, extending her hand slowly. The cat hesitated, then inched forward, drawn by something in the singer's energy. Just as it seemed the rescue would succeed, a deafening sound check blast from above sent the cat scurrying deeper into the machinery. "No!" Gaga cried, lunging forward without thinking. Elijah watched in horror as her arm became wedged between two metal components that would soon be in motion. "Are you okay?" he asked urgently. Gaga winced but nodded. "I'm stuck, but I can see the cat. It's right there, just beyond my reach." Elijah's radio crackled. Diana's voice came through, tense and clipped. 5 minutes. We need to restart. Management says the show has to go on." Elijah looked at Gaga, whose arm was still trapped. "They're restarting in 5 minutes. We need to get you out of here." Something changed in Lady Gaga's expression then. A hardness, a determination that showed why she had survived and thrived in an industry that crushed so many others. "Tell them to kill the whole system," she said. "Power it all down." "But the show, I am the show," she said firmly. "And I say we're not continuing until this cat is safe." Reluctantly, Elijah relayed the message. The response was immediate and heated. Millions in revenue were at stake. Contracts would be violated. The ripple effects would be enormous. "Do it anyway," Gaga insisted when Elijah explained. While they waited for a response from above, Gaga turned her attention back to the frightened cat. "You know," she said softly, "when I was starting out in New York, I was alone a lot, scared, like this little one. There were times I hid in corners too, afraid to come out." She began to sing, not one of her hits but a gentle, improvised melody. The cat's ears perked up. "That's right," she coaxed. "It's okay to be scared. But sometimes we have to trust someone to help us." As if understanding her words, the cat crept forward again. This time, when Gaga extended her free hand, the calico cautiously sniffed her fingers. Elijah's radio crackled again. "Management approved the system shutdown. Powering down in 30 seconds. Relief washed over both their faces, until Elijah noticed something alarming. One of the hydraulic lifts was already engaged, its pressure gauge climbing. "Something's wrong," he said, panic rising in his voice. "The system's activating early." The metal components around Gaga's trapped arm began to shift. "Get out!" Gaga ordered, her eyes wide as she felt the machinery beginning to move around her. "Elijah, take the cat and go!" But Elijah Martinez, the newest, least experienced crew member who had spent 3 years fetching coffee and coiling cables, made a different choice. Instead of retreating, he quickly assessed the hydraulic system, identifying the manual override valve that his training had covered, but he'd never used. "Hold on," he said, voice steadier than he felt. With a powerful twist, he forced the valve open, releasing the pressure building in the system. The machinery's ominous movement halted, but the gauge showed it was only temporary. In that brief window, Gaga made another attempt to coax the cat. This time, perhaps sensing the urgency, the calico leapt into her outstretched hand. With the cat secure, she tried to withdraw her other arm, but it remained firmly trapped. "I've got the cat," she said. "Now help me get free." Above them, the crowd had fallen silent, watching the drama unfold on the arena's screens. The acoustic music had stopped. 20,000 people held their breath collectively. Elijah examined the mechanism trapping Gaga's arm. "I need to create space between these components, but I can't hold the override and do that at the same time." Gaga looked down at the trembling cat in her hand, then back at Elijah. A silent understanding passed between them. She carefully transferred the calico to her trapped arm, wincing as she contorted to cradle the animal in the limited space. "Now the cat's weight is on my trapped arm," she explained. "Use both hands to free me." Elijah positioned himself and pushed against the unyielding metal with all his strength. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a groan of protest, the components separated just enough. "Now!" he gasped. In one fluid motion, Gaga pulled her arm free, cradling the cat protectively against her chest. They scrambled backward as the hydraulic system fully engaged, the massive platform beginning its programmed rise toward the stage above. Moments later, they emerged from beneath the stage into blinding light. The crowd's reaction was instantaneous, a deafening roar that seemed to shake the foundations of Madison Square Garden itself. On the giant screens, everyone could see Lady Gaga, disheveled and covered in dust, triumphantly holding a small calico cat. Diana rushed forward, relief and anger battling on her face. "The schedule, the broadcast," she began. Gaga silenced her with a look, then turned to face her audience. 20,000 phones lifted in unison, capturing the moment. "New York," she said, her voice carrying even without a microphone. "I want you to meet the newest little monster." The arena erupted again as Gaga gently stroked the cat, who had surprisingly calmed in her arms, purring audibly when she held it close to her microphone. "Sometimes," she continued, "the most important things in life aren't on the set list. Sometimes we have to stop everything for something small but precious." She turned to Elijah, who stood awkwardly at the edge of the spotlight. "This is Elijah," she announced, "and tonight he taught me something about courage. Not the showy kind, but the quiet kind that does the right thing even when it's hard." The spotlight expanded to include him, and the crowd cheered again. Elijah's face flushed crimson, but he managed a small wave. What happened next would be shared millions of times across social media platforms. Lady Gaga, still holding the rescued cat, walked to her piano at center stage. With one arm cradling her new feline friend and the other on the keys, she began to play a slowed-down, intimate version of Born This Way. As she sang about acceptance and compassion, the cat settled into her lap, occasionally looking up at her with what almost seemed like gratitude. The impromptu moment felt more authentic, more touching than any choreographed performance could have been. After the show, as medical staff bandaged her bruised arm, Gaga made 2 decisions. First, she would adopt the cat herself, naming it Madison after the garden where their paths had crossed. Second, she offered Elijah a new position, not as a stagehand, but as her personal assistant. "You saw what mattered when everyone else was focused on the show," she told him. "That's exactly the kind of person I need in my corner." 3 months later, Madison the cat had become an Instagram sensation, traveling on Gaga's private jet between concert venues. Elijah had found his place in the whirlwind of the music industry, not by blending into the background, but by standing out when it mattered most. And at every remaining show on the tour, Lady Gaga added a new segment, a quiet moment where she would sit at her piano with Madison curled nearby and speak about the importance of pausing in life to help those who cannot help themselves. Because sometimes, she would say to the hushed crowds, the real music happens in the moments between the songs.